Hello and welcome to the Shankly Gates podcast. I'm your host for the evening, Dan Clubb. I'm joined by Taryn, as ever, just the two of us tonight to talk about Liverpool returning to winning ways in the Premier League with a much needed victory, obviously. So we're going to pick the bones out of that performance, and we're also going to look ahead to the Carabao Cup second leg, as well as touching on what we've seen on Thursday night in the first leg. Might touch on the Premier League game with Crystal Palace next weekend, and we're going to round off with a little bit of transfer chat. So, first and foremost, Taryn, how are you doing?
Yeah, wonderful. Definitely great after today's win. Like you said, it was definitely needed. So, yeah, it was good to score 3 as well, made it even better. So, we knew Brentford was going to be a tough game, but it was good to get the result in the end, yeah.
It was tough, and we didn't really kick into gear. It probably took us till the goal, if anything,
Yeah.
I'd say, before we actually got going. What were your thoughts, I suppose, first on the team selection? Because obviously we've seen on Thursday night, which we will talk about in more detail,
Yeah.
Klopp struggling to get the forward line right, which isn't
Yeah.
really surprising because, we've never really been without Salah and Mane
Mm-hmm.
for any sort of period of time. So what were your thoughts on the starting line as we begin with? Because obviously Thursday he goes with Minamino, Jota, Firmino, and then Oxlade-Chamberlain comes in today. So what were your thoughts on the attacking side of things?
Yeah, I think for me, looking back at Thursday, I think it reminded me sort of our issues of last season. And, even last season when we had, our main front three, it was a service that was always an issue, mainly because our midfield was having to drop into defence, or the midfield wasn't with the right balance. So I thought, looking at the game on Thursday, we had that exact same issue, and I thought that today's game we were going to have similar issues if we went for the same midfield. And I don't think Klopp got it quite right on Thursday. I think he went for quite a conservative midfield, but I think that in mind he thought, like, okay, let's see if we can get through this leg and get a few goals. But I think looking back, obviously we'll talk about that later on, but he could have been a bit more progressive. But today I think he got it just right. I think also personnel came back at the right time for him. Obviously Curtis Jones had a good run out in the week, and obviously today in that midfield, I think it was definitely a right balance in terms of having Fabinho and Henderson. You need someone to sit, and Fabinho, I think he was outstanding today in terms of sitting and winning the ball back and progressing us. And same with Henderson. I think he was great box to box, but also I think Jones, in terms of bringing the ball forward, I think he lacked a bit in terms of decision making today. But bringing the ball forward, I think he was outstanding because no one else, I think, in the team. I think Trent struggled a bit in terms of his service, but and bringing the ball forward a bit. But Jones was carrying the ball forward and sort of breaking the lines as well. And I think that helped quite a bit, with the front three. And I think as well the decision to put Ox in the front three and take Minamino out and also shift Jota onto the other side, I think that helped quite a bit, because I think midweek Jota looked so lost on the right wing. He just looked like someone that wanted to be in the box and didn't know what to do out on the wing, especially on the right side. But I think Ox, he looked really comfortable out there and he could drift inside and switch around. And I think it was a very good decision from Klopp to put Ox in. And I think it was something I was asking for last week.
Yeah, that would have been the one change I would have made. In sort of when I was talking about the game, prior to it, the one big call Klopp had to make was Oxlade-Chamberlain, because I think he's deserved a start recently. His form has probably, like I say, he's probably earned a start. Probably not in that position, if we're going to be honest. But there's that much sort of competition for midfielders, despite them underperforming. Because you mentioned Henderson's form there, and I think you're right. I don't think he has been fantastic, but the midfield was much better today. Fabinho, in particular, who's really sort of taken on the mantle in the past few weeks. Obviously, he scores twice against Shrewsbury and then once again today. So it's not something we associate with him, but he's taken over Salah's goal scoring, which will do for us. More generally on the performance today then. So, we touched upon struggling to break them down and didn't really click for a while. It looked a lot like Thursday night, in my opinion, for the first 40 minutes. So where do you think we improved after we did score? Second half looked a lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think for me, at the start of the game, I said outright that if we didn't score in the first half, we were really going to struggle. And I thought that if we didn't, it would have been either a loss or a draw. I didn't see us winning the game. So luckily we scored at the end of the first half. And I think up to that point, we were good in terms of bringing the ball forward and getting in and around the box, but it didn't seem to click. And I think Klopp had obviously, sort of adjusted the players and almost told them, have a few shots, because I think we do lack that quite a bit sometimes, is having the confidence to take a few shots. But it seemed to be taking shots in stupid positions. Trent had a few, a few of the others had a few shots that were just wayward and wild. But I think in the second half, after the first goal, I think we sort of shored that up, and it was take the shot when you need to take the shot. And I think the decision making sort of improved quite a bit. I don't think it was great, by no way were Liverpool at their best today. And to be honest, I think, Brentford sort of dropped off a bit, and, a few of the goals were their mistakes. But I wasn't totally sort of convinced by us in the performance. I think the goal and the scoreline sort of flatters us a bit. But, that being said, I think we did quite well in terms of stopping Brentford from coming back and sort of capitalising that and scoring the 2 goals. But I think in particular, the fullbacks got a bit more freedom. I think they were a bit more sort of attacking, I guess. I think Trent was pushing a bit more down the wing. I think normally Salah's occupying that space and Trent has to come inwards. But I think he realised that, when you've got a front three of Ox, Jota and Firmino who all want to play in the centre areas, I think we lacked quite a bit of width as well. And I think that was on both flanks. And obviously we see from the Robertson goal, he does cross from quite deep, but also I think it comes from him being quite out wide as well, in terms of, the pitch and the space that we have, and Ox coming in narrow. So I think there was a bit of a tactical tweak in there from Klopp in terms of getting us to play a bit wider. I think Brentford, were quite narrow, and they seem to want to defend and just try and hit us on the counter. So I don't know about you, but I think, playing wider in the second half definitely helped us, because I think the midfield with Fabinho and the 2 centre-backs was quite solid then.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, a lot of our attacking threat comes from the fullbacks anyway.
Yeah.
I think a bigger problem, certainly on Thursday, and for part of today as well, was the quality from both of them wasn't quite there. I mean, they come away from today's game with an assist apiece. And, if you look at Liverpool's Twitter, they're sort of lauding them, which is fair because the records are outstanding.
Yeah.
But over 2 games now, I don't think they've quite been at it. Trent in particular, I thought, really struggled on Thursday. And one thing I do want to say is the corners. They were improved today, but even then, some of the deliveries, obviously, we weren't on telly, as it were. And I've seen people talking about having Cresswell delivery for West Ham being absolutely top notch. And I think West Ham scored from a corner today, Jared Bowen. And I think, when you think about Robertson and Trent, the assists they get from wide position, their corners should be so much better. You know what I mean? But they just seem to struggle for whatever reason. I don't know whether they're trying to be too pinpoint or what, but like I say, it was better. It was better second half. There's no doubt about it. Just want to touch on Oxlade-Chamberlain in a bit more detail, actually, because if he comes off today with what looks like an injury, Klopp said he hopes it's not too serious. He thinks it might not be too serious by the sounds of it. Obviously, listen, we all hope he's fit. If he is fit, do you see him as someone who could maybe grab this opportunity while some of the other lads are away?
Yeah, I think for me, I always earmark the start of the season, and this season in particular, as being his sort of make or break season almost at Liverpool. I think he's been there for a while. Obviously, we know the injury issues that he's had, but I think he needed to sort of make a statement for himself. And in pre-season, we saw Klopp utilising him, further up and trying to fit him into the team. So that sort of showed you the faith that they had in him. But I think so far he's been quite good in midfield. I think he's been good in terms of progressing the ball forward. I don't think he's been as creative as we expected him to be, but I think he's definitely, made a mark as opposed to some of the other midfielders that have had opportunities as well. And I think today, like you said, definitely, with Salah and Mane gone, I think it was his opportunity maybe to sort of prove to Klopp that he is a versatile player and that, he is worth keeping at the end of the day. Because I think, at the end of the season, we might see quite a few departures from the club, if we are to progress and sort of develop the team where it needs to be developed. And I think, today Ox was in that sort of mood where he needed to prove that, he is a versatile player that can play in the midfield, he can play in the front three, and he will produce. And, he scored a goal today. Obviously, that's helped his cause. But again, on the flip side of that, we know sort of the injury issues, and as much as we hope it's not serious, it always comes at a time when he seems to be enjoying his football, playing good football, and he's in a moment where he has his opportunity, and it's just unfortunate. And you do hope that sort of it isn't serious, but I think it's just one of those things. But I think if he is all right, I think he has done enough to sort of prove himself so far. But I do think he needs to capitalise it if he wants to sort of stay in and amongst the first team. Obviously, we don't know the additions that we'll get, and I don't think there'll be many. But when the likes of Thiago come back, Keita, obviously the front three as well, where does he fit in then? So it all depends, obviously, in the time that he's got now, but also in the time that he's got after that before, if he moves or if he stays then also.
Yeah, it feels like he and a couple of others are potentially playing for the futures in this little
Yeah.
period because they've got a golden opportunity in many ways. Oxlade-Chamberlain in particular, a few times you think, is he coming towards an end of his Liverpool career? And the same could be said for Minamino.
Mm-hmm.
The same could be said for Origi if he was fit, but obviously he's not, so he's kind of out of that equation. So it does feel like Oxlade-Chamberlain has got a real chance here to make or break his Liverpool career, I suppose. And obviously today he showed signs that he might just be able to make it because, like you touch upon, his versatility is something that's really important to this squad. Chances are we're going to lose James Milner as one outgoing in the summer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not comparing Oxlade-Chamberlain to James Milner because they're very different players, but in terms of the versatility, we've seen how many positions Milner can play, and I think that's part of the reason Klopp is such a big fan of him. So, yeah, just to round off today's game, we all remember what happened against Brentford first time round. It was a really physical encounter. They made life very difficult for us. It was really important we got the 3 points today, wasn't it? Because obviously we moved back into second.
Yeah.
I want to say we've kept the pressure on City, but I think that'd be being particularly optimistic. So just finish off, Taryn, on today by saying, like, how important was it that we won today? And how impressed were you with that Liverpool performance?
Yeah, I think, they mentioned before that we hadn't won in our last 3. And I think, the Chelsea game I looked at last week, I think we should have won. And looking at Chelsea yesterday, they didn't look like a complete side, even though they had most of their first team players back. So I think that was quite disappointing. We have been quite disappointed in the past few weeks. And I think, one, we need to prove to ourselves that, without Salah and Mane, we can still compete. And we do have a bit more depth than people think. But also, I think, to show everyone else that, if Man City do slip up, we are still doing our jobs and winning the games that we need to be winning. I thought also it gave a bit more confidence, I'd say, to the defence. I don't think we were great in terms of playing the ball out today. I thought we were very, very lucky in terms of if Brentford were on their game today like they were, at their place. I think we could have been punished quite a few times. I thought playing out from the back, we were quite risky and the ball just didn't seem to stick. But that being said, this season, how many times, has it been mentioned that we've lost points from winning positions? And obviously today, to come back and win points against a team that we'd previously dropped points to against, despite their sort of position in the league, I think it was a good statement for us. And it showed that sort of the team, when it doesn't have its first team personnel, it can still, pull together and get the results that we need.
Yeah, that was it. It was just really important, I thought, today. Because there's been a little bit of unrest with the performances recently, and potentially rightly so. But yeah, really important win. So we'll move on now to the midweek. We've kind of touched upon the first leg, but I want to get your thoughts ahead of the second leg. So obviously 0-0 with Arsenal. We're away now for the second leg, which is an advantage Liverpool sort of gave away with a postponement. We really struggled in that first leg, even though Arsenal went down to 10 men early on. 10 men almost ruined the game, in my opinion, because Liverpool were the better side for the first 10-15. And I think we'd have been better had Xhaka let Jota go on. Jota potentially scores, and then it's a different game for all the right reasons, whereas they go down to 10, shut up shop, etc. So what are your thoughts ahead of this one? How can Liverpool approach this second leg differently? And we've seen today they played with a similar sort of side that we're going to see again. Will they have learned any lessons from that? And can we improve and actually go and beat them?
Well, I'd like to think so. I think today seemed like a sort of an exercise in, one, breaking down the low block, but I think also taking your chances as well. I think the issue that we do have now is Arsenal, though, that if they just sit back and sort of defend, if we aren't on our day and aren't on form, obviously not with Mane and Salah in the squad as well, there is a chance for them to shut out the game if they do, score a goal or if they need to shut out the game. I think that is sort of a weakness that they've highlighted already. That being said, though, Arsenal obviously will want to go through and they will want to get a result. And obviously having their game postponed, they might be a bit laggy as well. We don't know who might be available for them, so that might work in our favour too. But yeah, I think today was an important sort of factor in that, in terms of Klopp, one, needed to know the personnel that, are going to perform in those positions. I think we'll most likely see, if Ox isn't in, we could possibly see maybe Minamino play on the right, or Curtis Jones go into the front three. But, obviously that depends on sort of who's available again. But I think it also showed that we do have the ability to break teams down when we need to, and we do have the persistence to do it. I think we did lack a bit of quality today, and you've just got to hope that when we go to Arsenal, sort of the occasion of, you're one win away from a Wembley final sort of spurs you on, and you get that extra bit of quality. But I think that is the big factor for me in the return leg now, is who's got more quality and who's sort of willing to take the risk, but also can sort of make the most of the opportunities as well. I think it'll be interesting who he plays, whether he does go for a strong 11. Obviously we saw that Alisson played the other week.
Yeah.
Will he play again? Maybe not. Obviously he said it was Kelleher's tournament, but do you take the risk? It's your sort of semi-final. It's one game to Wembley. Do you go full strength? But it's one of those. I think it's a really hard one to predict now. Obviously, maybe last week, if Arsenal didn't have sort of the postponement that they've had, you'd say that Arsenal probably go better into this if they come out as a result of the London derby. But with a bit of lethargy in them, and probably not their first team as well, it might be beneficial to us. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will. It is interestingly poised. Obviously, it wasn't a disastrous result the other night. It just felt like another missed opportunity, really, because they go down to 10 early on, and you think, okay, put this tie to bed. And obviously, we couldn't do that because we were well off the pace, if we're going to be honest. From the second leg's point of view, I think you're right. It is going to be interesting to see how both teams play and how both teams approach it, because, like you mentioned, Arsenal had their North London derby postponed today, so not quite sure how they'll shape up. And Arsenal will obviously be at home, and there'll be an expectancy of them to come out and play. Like, they can't play for 90 minutes at home like they did for 75 minutes at Anfield, for instance, So it'd be an open game. I'm hoping it'll be a more open affair, which tends to suit this Liverpool side. And like I said, I hope Liverpool now, having played a couple of games without Salah and Mane and Keita, can learn what that is, because we've never had to do it before. It's so fresh in our minds. It's so new. It's so different. Training and matches are going to be a big, big learning curve for this squad at the minute. And like I say, hopefully we can get it right for Thursday. You touch on sort of team selection there. I personally think he'll go with Alisson again, although I'd have no issue with Kelleher. Aside from those two, because I think the lads who came on Thursday night actually were the most impressive. Nico Williams is really good. And I thought Curtis Jones was really good when he came on. Now, do you see Klopp going particularly strong for this, or do you see him rotating with Palace in mind on Sunday?
I think it's a really tough one to call. I think I was quite shocked that he played Matip last week as well. I thought Konate might have come in. I can still maybe see Konate coming in, but obviously we know in Matip he can have a few injury problems, and that's the last thing you want is Matip getting injured. After playing quite a few games on the bounce, he does like to sort of refresh the back line. It'd be nice to see Kostas play. I was quite impressed with Kostas. I think he deserves to play as well. But I think the right back position would be quite interesting, because if Ox is injured, do you play Nico further up the pitch and keep Trent at the back? Or do you sort of throw Kai Gordon up there, or make a makeshift sort of attack as well? Because I don't think Jota looked comfortable playing on the right, and I don't think Minamino looks comfortable playing on the right really either. So then you're stuck with the issue then of your one player that Klopp likes to play on the right is Nico Williams. So it's a very difficult one. I think Jones looked much more comfortable today playing in midfield as opposed to out on the wing. I thought he was impressive, but I think him and Robertson just kept getting sort of tangled with each other and sort of a bit confused. So I think it might be good to have Jones in midfield and maybe stick Jota on the left. So I think the main thing is do you trust Trent to sort of make the most of the game this week as opposed to last week? I thought his lackluster crossing today was a bit of an issue. It just seemed that everything he wanted to do was whip the ball into the box. Or do you sort of say, right, it's the cup. We've got Palace on the weekend, a more important game, you'd say, in terms of just keeping pressure and, making sure that we are ahead. Or do you just sort of say to Nico Williams, just go out there and play with Trent behind you? So it's a difficult one, but I think Klopp will go with Trent at the back and sort of take him off later on if we are winning, or just to lock out the game as well.
Yeah, I personally would be going pretty much full strength for
Yeah.
this, and I said that last week before the
Hmm.
first leg. I'd be going full strength for this little run of games because I think there's a mini break after that, and then we get
Yeah.
obviously the AFCON lads back. So
Hmm.
I see no issue with really going for it. And you're right in terms of 3 points are probably more important and keeping the pressure on the top of the
Yeah.
league and all that sort of stuff. But we are literally 90 minutes away from
Yeah.
Wembley now, and listen, I'm not the biggest Carabao Cup fan in the
I
history
was
of the
waiting
world.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jurgen Klopp certainly isn't. But at the same time, we're here now.
Yeah.
And after what's gone on with Arsenal over the past couple of weeks, and obviously not putting them to bed the other night, it'd be nice to do them on their own patch. And I think,
Yeah.
like I say, we've got an opportunity. Listen, the likes of Simicast you've mentioned, no issue whatsoever. Kelleher coming in for Allison, no problem. Because
Yeah.
if that was a Premier League game, I'd have no problem with that. At the same time, with all due respect to the likes of Cade Gordon, young lad, bags of talent, came on today as well, just Premier League debut. What a talent that kid is.
Hmm.
But I don't really want to see him start on Thursday.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one, but I suppose we'll see what happens as time moves on. On that note, we will move on, and we'll move on to the Palace game just very quickly. That's on Sunday, 2 o'clock kickoff. Back on telly this time, Liverpool. Away at Palace, one of my favourite away grounds to go to, just to say. What do you expect from that game? And then we're not going to touch on team selection because we're
Yeah.
quite a long way away from that now.
Hmm.
Anything can happen between now and then. So, yeah, what do you... Because Palace have been really impressive, I think,
Yeah.
under Patrick Vieira. They've changed
Definitely.
the way they play. Previously, under Hodgson, they were quite hard to beat and robust, and they made life
Yeah.
difficult. I say hard to beat. We beat them 7-0 last season. But under Patrick Vieira, a different side. So what are your
Yeah.
impressions of them this season?
Well, like you said, I think they've been very impressive. I think they've got quite a few young players that are, really proving themselves this season. Elise and Conor Gallagher as well doing really well this season. And I think for me, they'll pose a similar problem that Brentford posed today, and also in the first fixture we played them, in terms of they will take the game to you, but they are almost smart enough to sort of say we will drop back and absorb pressure. But I think they will have, hopefully not on their day, but they will have the quality if they need to capitalise and score the goals if they do get the opportunities. So I think it'll be a very difficult game. Obviously, you said that a lot can happen now in terms of team selection now and then. And obviously, it's one game close to the AFCON boys coming back as well. But I think if we put a strong team out and sort of we've learned from the Arsenal game a bit more, like, the chemistry with the team and how each other plays, and sort of make the most again of the opportunities and not be wasteful, and like, today, capitalize when we get the chance and score. I think that, it will be a good game for us, and I think we will be comfortable in terms of getting past them. I think they'll make it very difficult for us, but I think if we play how we can play, I don't think Palace will be able to cope with terms of quality. It's just a matter of if they sit back and sort of counter us, are we going to have the quality then to break them down and sort of have the defensive sort of solidity to stop them from scoring then?
Yeah, and they've definitely got threats.
Yeah.
I think Conor Gallagher's having a wonderful season there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned them sitting back, and that's almost what I think plays into our hands in that game because they're
Mhm.
probably not likely to do that
Yeah.
because of the way they're trying to transform themselves under
Mhm.
Vieira. I think if we'd have gone there with Hodgson,
Yeah.
they might have sat back and they might have made life difficult, and that'd be almost a more feared game in my
Yeah.
eyes. But knowing that they want to come out and play makes you think, okay, yeah, that's fine, because we can pick teams off when they do that. It's when Arsenal sit behind the ball with 10 men, or
Yeah.
Burnley, or West Brom previously, or whoever it may be, especially at Anfield, and
Mhm.
that's when we tend to not be able to break someone down. But like I say, hopefully, and I think Palace will cause us problems. I think there's no doubt about that. But like I say, if we're going to maintain any slim hopes of winning this Premier League, Palace away is a game we just have to win.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's for next week. And for now, we are amidst a particularly quiet January transfer window from a Liverpool perspective. We are still tentatively linked with players every now and then. But one player we have been tentatively linked with for seemingly about since the day after he left the club originally is Philippe Coutinho. Just want to get your thoughts, Tyrone. We spoke off air about his
Yeah.
return to Aston Villa. Obviously, the Gerrard factor as well. what are your thoughts on his move to Aston Villa? And obviously, we've seen him score on debut last night against Manchester United, of all people. So, yeah, what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think for me, my expectations were quite high for Coutinho. I sort of saw his loan move when he went to Bayern and when he broke through in there and the promise that he had. And I thought that was close to the Coutinho that we had at Liverpool. He was nowhere near, but as close as he's performed. And I think going back to Villa, obviously the Gerrard factor, but also being in the Premier League, a place that he just absolutely tore up for, for us. I was quite excited and optimistic for him. Obviously, I didn't expect him to start, but when he came on, I didn't expect him to have the impact that he did. As soon as he got the ball, he just seemed like everything just happened around him. I think he was helped. Jacob Ramsey was outstanding yesterday, but Coutinho he was just everywhere. And it just looked like a Coutinho that was happy playing football again. I think Gerrard commented on it saying Coutinho needs to feel love. And I think definitely, he felt the love yesterday. And what way to sort of mark your debut with a goal and assist, especially against Man United. And it is a shame. It does hurt. We did talk about it. It does hurt to see, that magician perform for somebody else. And against United, it just took me to the game where he just ran through their defense and dinked the hair. And I just thought, God, I want that back. But I think obviously we've progressed. He sadly hasn't progressed at the rate that he'd hoped to. And I think some Liverpool fans underlyingly hoped he would. But I think, hopefully he performs well for Villa and he doesn't get shipped back to Barcelona and sort of stuck on their bench again, because I don't think they're keen on him anymore. And hopefully proves himself and Villa sort of say, yeah, you know what, we'll take you on board, and we get to see Coutinho play week in and week out again.
Yeah, I was amongst the Liverpool fans who, because of the way he left, the whole back injury saga and the fact, listen, I'm Liverpool through and through. I think Liverpool's the best football club in the world, so I don't see why anyone would want to leave the club. I do get it. I'm not stupid enough not to understand it. But at the same time, like, I was gutted and annoyed and didn't like him very much when he left the club. And I was quite happy to see him struggle in Barcelona for obvious reasons. Having said all of that, watching him yesterday, I said to you off air, it was a bit of a proud dad moment when he scored, because up until that moment, I'd been quite nonplussed. When we were linked to him forevermore, I was like, no, not interested. We've moved on. As a side, we've played differently now. We had to play differently when he left. I think him at his best would improve us. I think there's no doubt about that. His quality, very difficult to find that quality. He's a brilliant technician who can pick a pass, in a phone box. He's a quality footballer. But I was made up for him yesterday. I was. And I think it's going to be particularly weird when we go to Villa Park and Klopp, Coutinho and Gerrard share a moment. My head might just fall off straight away when I see that.
The tears might start rolling then.
That is a mad thought right now, that is. But listen, he scored, he assisted against Manchester United, and he brought it back from 2-0. So it's not a bad way to start. And before we move on to Liverpool's potential needs, incomings or outgoings, we do have to touch on Rafael Benitez as well. It came to me whilst we were talking about Coutinho and people we used to love, and maybe still do in some cases. So, obviously Benitez got sacked today. Everton got beat 2-1 by Norwich yesterday, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say. Unsurprisingly, I must admit, I was at lunch yesterday and I seen it went 2-0 down, and I said to the people I was with, that's it. If they don't turn that round and win 3-2, he's gone. He has to be gone. And obviously I was proved right. He left today after 200 odd days, I think, and a pretty, unemotional, cold statement from Everton came out, which is fair enough. They've got no affection towards him anymore, so be it. But often you see a football club will say, we appreciate the work done, and that's I don't think there's a lot of that going on. So, Taryn, your reaction to Benitez's short tenure and the fact he's now left the club?
Yeah, I don't think it was a great appointment to begin with. I don't think you could ever sort of, if it was the other way around, I don't think, you'd ever be able to accept it as a fan. And I don't really know how the ownership, ever thought it was a wise idea. That being said, I think, sort of the aggression of Evertonians comes from the fact that, Ancelotti just left him in the lurch. This project that, they'd been sort of banging on about for all this time, and he just decided, now I'm going to Real Madrid. So I think there's a bit of that bitterness in there when it comes to, the Benitez time. But I also think that he's had it very difficult. One, I don't think he's had the support of the fans. Obviously, I don't really blame them.
Yeah, I
But
agree
I
with that.
think
Yeah.
he's had quite a few injuries in there. He's lost quite a few of the players. He's obviously had quite a few COVID issues. And the worst thing I think for Everton is the fact that he's gone and Luca Digne's left their club as well. Sort of they earmarked him as one of their best players. I think, as much as we won't sort of be happy about the fact that Rafael Benitez, our ex-manager, has absolutely ruined Everton, because it's not nice to see that or
No,
ever.
of course not. No.
It's awful to ever see that happen to a football club. It is a shame to see him leave.
Yeah.
But I think for them, it's not put them in a great place. I think the big issue they've got now is just who do they get in next. I personally think that Duncan Ferguson should have been given the job, from the get-go. I think he proved himself, and I think he's the manager that they need as a club. I think it's similar to the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer situation, where United really needed someone to remind them how United were. I think there comes a point where you've got to say, right, we need someone else to progress us to the next level, which I don't think United did. But I think if Everton needs someone to stabilise the boat now, obviously they're talking about Wayne Rooney, but I don't think he wants to leave Derby until that job is sort of finished for him.
Yeah.
But I think if there's anyone that's going to come in there and sort of win over the fan base and sort of reunite the club that I think they obviously want, I think it's going to be Duncan Ferguson.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think if you're gonna hire someone now, it would be Ferguson, potentially till the end of the season. Obviously, that could change if they get any further down the table, because Leeds win today. They probably go above them, I'd imagine, maybe even stretch clear of them a little bit.
Yeah.
Norwich beat Everton yesterday. That drags it all a little bit tighter down there. So, yeah, listen, I personally agree. I think they should. That would be a wise decision to give it to Ferguson. I don't think Ferguson long term. I think you touched upon maybe giving him the job sort of permanently. I'm not sure on that. I think I'd want a manager like Gerrard is to go and cut his teeth somewhere else, personally. I think Rooney's not a bad shout. He's certainly done a good job at Derby against every single possible odd. Fair play to him for that. Because that is a poison chalice of a job right now, and he's really making something of it. So, listen, we don't like to gloat. Certainly when it's Benitez, we've got a lot of time, a lot of affection for Rafael Benitez. I'm not a particularly smug Liverpool fan when it comes to Everton. It's what it is, what it is. You know what I mean? But like I say, I think Ferguson would definitely be the wise appointment, because I always compare it to when Dalglish came in. After the Hodgson era for us, and it's like you need that feel good factor, and I think Ferguson brings that to them, like that. And it's never the long term solution. It's never. But right now, you need someone who's going to come in, lift the place up. Everyone's going to fight for you, and away you go. And that's what Ferguson did last time, and that's what Dalglish used to do for us. But yeah, I also think you're right in terms of Benitez's injuries. Fitness problems. Calvert-Lewin gets off to a great start and then gets injured. He's had problems, but he was he's on a higher than nothing from the get-go, wasn't he? It had to go so well for them to take to him. Like by now, where are we? Middle of January. They had to be in the top 4, in my opinion, for the fans to go, okay, let's give him a chance. You know what I mean? Anything less than that, they're not having. So it was never going to work, let's be honest. But yeah, that's enough looking back at ex-people connected to Liverpool. Let's look at potentially, probably not, some people who could be connected to Liverpool in the future. So there's 2 transfers, sort of pretty regular links that I want to ask you about. One is with a central midfielder, a position I believe we need. Borussia Mönchengladbach's Dennis Zakaria. I'm not sure how much you know about him, hopefully quite a lot. But defensive-minded midfielder, out of contract in the summer, potentially available on the cheap this month, so they don't lose him for free. What are your thoughts?
I think for me it'd be quite a good signing. I think obviously Fabinho is our starting sort of defensive midfielder. That's not going to change. But I think the big thing at Liverpool now is competition for places. I think when Fabinho isn't fit, or if he isn't in the side, we do lack quite a bit defensively. I don't think Henderson or Milner or anyone else can play the 6 properly, because they just love sort of running about everywhere, and it's just crazy in the midfield. So having someone like him, not only can he play sort of deeper. He can play a bit further up as a box to box, but he can also
Yeah.
cover at the back as well if needs be. So it's good, to have that versatility. I think he's quite a sort of, like you said, defensive-minded midfielder, likes to win the ball back. Don't know what he's like on the ball, but I think, we looked at Minamino, players like that, 7 million, a price range, under 10 million, something like that. You never know how it can pay off. I think Minamino, he's been decent for us for what we paid for him. I think he could do a bit more, but I think when he's been called upon, he's done the job that he's required. So I think having Zakaria in there, one as sort of a box-to-box we need to late on in the game. Obviously, if Milner does leave in the summer, it'd be nice to have someone like that. Obviously, he's quite young, got a bit to develop as well, and it'd be nice to have sort of Klopp tutoring him as well. So I think it'd be a good signing for us. And I think if we are going to sign someone in this window, I think it looks most likely will be him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be a really good piece of business for Liverpool, actually, because I think, without his contract running out in 6 months' time, you're looking more of a 25, 30 million pound footballer.
Definitely.
So to pick him up for probably less than 10 is sort of the report. And you can't really blame Mönchengladbach because, listen, 7 million is better than the nothing you're going to get in 6 months' time, obviously. So I think he covers a lot of bases for us. You mentioned the fact he can play sort of centre-back as well. Listen, God knows how much we needed them last season. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And obviously with Wijnaldum leaving the club, never really got replaced. We've been unlucky with Harvey Elliott's injury in particular. But in 6 months' time, again, like we've touched on Milner a few times, okay, he's going. We don't really know about Thiago in terms of, listen, we know how good he is. We don't know about his constant injury problems. And he was linked with a move away. I don't think that's necessarily true, but it hasn't quite worked for him, certainly in terms of fitness yet. So for me, I agree. I think Zakaria will be a brilliant addition to the squad and a really good piece of business, which is what this football club's board certainly like doing. Last one then, transfer link-wise. Another one linked with the club. A lot, actually, a hell of a lot. And another one out of contract in 6 months. It was Mane Dembele. Arguably the most injury-prone footballer of all time. More injury-prone than me last cricket season, which, if you'd have listened to mine and Taryn's off-air conversation, you'd understand there was a hell of a lot. But yeah, listen, Dembele, talent. I think he cost 130-odd million when they first signed him from Borussia Dortmund. So, you don't pay that money for someone who's not a good footballer, similar to Coutinho, actually. What are your thoughts on the possibility of him arriving at Anfield? Just to kind of, give you a head start and for the listeners, viewers, plays across the front line, very fast, very injury prone, like I say. But there's certainly a player there. I want to say he's 25. So, yeah, what would your thoughts be, Taryn?
Yeah, no, thank you for me. I think, obviously, at Dortmund, he was outstanding. I think everyone thought he was going to tear the world apart. But I think along with him comes the sort of wage issues that he demands. I think that's why Barcelona have almost had enough of him. One, obviously, like I mentioned, he's injury prone. As much as he does have that underlying quality, I don't think he's shown it enough. One at Barcelona, but also in recent weeks as well. I think for me, obviously the issue that we've got at the moment is sort of the Salah contract and, obviously the price that Salah wants. I think it'd be very wrong for us to then say to Ousmane Dembele, come to our club, because he's not going to come on a cheap. As much as for him, he's happy to take a paycheck for me, in my eyes. And I think he's another player that, like I like the phrase, he needs loving, in that sort of sense. But I think Klopp would be the manager that he would thrive under. And I think Dortmund, very similar club to us in terms of culture. I think it would be a club that he'd thrive under. But again, the issue is the cost, really. We might not have to pay a price for him, but how much are you going to pay for him in terms of wage demands? So that's the main reservation for me. But the one question I do want to ask you, actually, which has sort of been playing on my mind since we've been going through these podcasts, is in terms of where do you see sort of Liverpool's transfer business now going from here? Obviously, this season, this window, the summer and the season's going on, because I think for me, looking at it, Klopp's leaving in a few years. He's pretty much said that when his contract goes, he might sign a 1-year extension, 2 years, depends on, what's going on at the club. But it seems like his time at Liverpool, it's coming to a close, not so shortly, but, in the future. So where do you think we're heading? I think every summer we say, "Oh, it'll be this summer we spend big," or "It'll be this summer." We've been saying that for 4 or 5 summers now, and it doesn't look like we're going to spend a lot of money this window. So, where do you think this is going to happen, if it is ever going to happen?
Really interesting question, actually. The way I've seen us conducting business over the past couple of years, really, is with a view to when Klopp does leave. I think, listen, we're obviously signing players for the here and now. When we do
Yeah,
sign, I think Jota was a player for the here and now. Thiago definitely was because of his
yeah,
age. But generally speaking, I think a lot of our transfer business has been and will continue to be based on very young players,
hmm,
actually. I think obviously we signed Kate Gordon, we signed Harvey Elliott, Peter Luger, the young goalkeeper,
hmm,
Step Vanderberg, whether he makes it or not is a different story. And I think that's with a view to Klopp leaving the club and the squad in a very healthy place. Because that's the one thing that fills me with massive confidence about when Klopp does, which is 2024 at the minute, obviously sort
yeah,
of 2.5 years away. He's always spoken about leaving the club in a healthy place, and
yeah,
he absolutely adores his football club.
hmm,
There's no two ways about that. People may often in football you can question someone's morals of why
yeah,
they are somewhere. Certainly with the money that's swilling around, one thing you can't question about Jurgen Klopp is his passion for Liverpool,
yeah,
which is great. And that's where I see a lot of our transfer business. I don't
hmm,
listen, we have to spend money for the here and now as well. There's no getting away
yeah,
from that. Like, we're linked with all and sundry for the summer. And I do believe this summer has to be a big one because, you talk about, you mentioned the contract situations with Salah, Mane, and Firmino all being
yeah,
18 months away. That is
hmm,
a nightmare scenario in many ways. So there are things that need rectifying. I think the midfielder scenario, which you spoke about just
yeah,
briefly, is one that needs sorting here and now as soon as Milner leaves, in my opinion. Um, but generally speaking, I think the club and Klopp are setting us up for the long term right now. If you look at
yeah,
Canate was signed, 36 million, 22
hmm,
years of age, the Jude Bellingham links don't go away. He's 18. You know what I mean?
hmm,
So that's the sort of business I can see us doing.
yeah,
Talented players who can make an impact right now, but more so the players that will be the nucleus of our squad for sort of the next 5, 6, 7 years.
yeah.
I don't know what you're more than welcome to answer that yourself,
Well,
even though you posed the
no,
question.
I think very similar to you in terms of, it definitely looks like he is sort of bringing in players quite young, almost to be tutored by sort of the more experienced players. Obviously,
Yeah,
Canate is enjoying playing next to, Virgil van Dijk, Costas as well, playing under Robertson.
yeah,
The midfield has obviously got quite a few good molds in there.
hmm
But I think also the big issue that we have now is we're playing teams around us in terms of Chelsea and Man United as well, you could say, and obviously
yeah,
Man City, who just seem to be able to throw money at whoever they want and just pack their squad full of players. And the issue
yeah,
is how long does it take until this Liverpool team can't compete with them anymore? Because if it gets to a point where maybe say City sign Haaland in the summer,
yeah,
as much as I love this Liverpool team, my reservations is this squad is getting old, and you can see it in some aspects in terms of the running seems to be a bit more jagged. Henderson, for me, has been this season. That
yeah. He's
energy just
dropped.
seems to
Yeah,
have dropped a little bit. And I think that is a reservation. Obviously, I think we've made some great signings, Jota,
hmm
but I think as well, there seems to be a bit lacking in terms of the here and now,
yeah.
and maybe a bit too much prioritization for the future and after Klopp leaves. But I think, I don't know about you, but that's personally my opinion. Maybe there needs to be a bit more emphasis on the here and now as well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think it's absolutely fair. I do think sort of the last few transfer windows have been a bit too geared
Yeah.
towards what happens next.
Mhm.
Like I touched upon, Peter Luger, young keeper,
Yeah.
Kate Gordon. I mentioned earlier, looks an outstanding little footballer. But
Yeah.
do I want to see him in the Premier League against Man City? If you no, I don't. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
whereas City are signing 100 million Jack Grealish,
Yeah.
who hasn't set the world alight, but that's a
Mhm.
signing for the here and now. And
Yeah.
that's why they go, okay, we just won the league. There's 100 million for one player. We'll go and do it again. It looks
Yeah.
like Chelsea, similar. They spend 97 million on Romelu
Mhm.
Lukaku. He must be 28, 29 now, unless
Yeah.
I'm very much mistaken. A signing for the here and now again. We haven't done that for a few years. You're
Mhm.
talking the Van Dijk signing,
Yeah.
really, and the Allison cap. They're
Mhm.
the last time we did that.
Yeah.
And for me, this summer does warrant at least one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be a Jared Bowen, a Rafinha, you can throw more names out there if we needed to. But I do think this summer we have to do one of them, as well as your future signings. It could even be Jude Bellingham, if we're honest. He's probably the exception to this whole conversation. Because he's future and right now. He's that good, you know what I mean? So, that'd tick 2 boxes, I suppose. So from a club perspective, what we're talking about in terms of the way they want to go, that he would be the ideal signing. Because, like I say, you're talking 15 years of service as well as coming and making an impact right away. So, listen, we can hope, we can pray. It's weird because the club's gone more and more into their reluctant to spend money and sell to buy model as their tenure as owners has gone on. The signings we mentioned there, and they're always the signings that are the exception to the rule, and the signings that rival fans use when Liverpool fans talk about net spend and they talk about not spending. You signed Fabinho, Keita was 50-odd million. Fabinho, Keita, Van Dijk and Alisson for 200 million plus. And they're right, but they're 3 years ago now. You know what I mean? And like I say, I do think we need to do that again this summer. Maybe not 4 of them, that'd be nice, but I can't see it. Just to finish on then, I'll get a prediction off you, but just want to say about Dembele as well. I agree with you. Not necessarily in terms of the money, but certainly in terms of injuries. I had a quick look while we were talking. He's played 11 times this season, scored once, 2 assists, but his record is just littered with knee injury, hamstring injury. And it's a terrible thing, and I feel sorry for him, just like I felt sorry for Coutinho. I feel sorry for Naby Keita, picks up injuries all the time. But, God, we don't need another one of them. If you could promise me now that he'd come and be fit, I'd take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
Yeah, but no one can do that. So for me, gamble not worth taking. So just to finish, I'll get a prediction for the second leg of the Carabao Cup, please.
I'm going to go for 2-1 to us. I think
cool. Goal scorers off you.
I can see Jota getting one. He looks lively. He deserved one today. And I can see maybe Minamino getting one just because he likes scoring in the EFL Cup. So, we'll have to see.
He does like scoring in that. I'm going to go 3-1 Liverpool because, I think Arsenal will have to come out and play a little bit more. I think that suits us. We get a 2-0 lead. They get back into it and think, here we go. And then we score again and kill it. And I'm going to go Firmino 2 because his record against Arsenal is superb. And I'm going to go Jordan Henderson.
Oh,
silence a few more.
All cut back and whipped it into the top corner. That's the only way.
That's the only way it's happening. Let's be honest. But that's great. Taryn, really appreciate you joining, mate.
Yes, thanks very much.
Taking up 50 minutes of your time on a Sunday night. We'll be back next week, probably to look back on that Carabao Cup clash and also to look back and talk about that game against Crystal Palace. But take care, all. It's been a pleasure.